Greetings, everyone. Can I be heard?
I speak as a Christian. I speak as a free black man. I speak in the name of my grandmama. And I speak in the name of Fannie Lou Hamer, Martin Luther King Jr., and so many others. Shame on them. Shame on them.
What do you have to say about that?
I would say that the minimal moral litmus test, litmus test for voting for any candidates of any human being, including a politician, is opposition to genocide. And if you can't raise your voice against genocide, if you deny genocide, if they can't oppose genocide, then there's very little moral fiber in it. Genocide is taking place and you can't say a mumbling word.
What's she afraid of, in your view?
She's afraid of the major forces in our party. She's tied to a deeply corrupt Democratic Party. She's tied to big money and lobbying. But I'll tell you this, if those babies and innocent people were white, Democratic Party have a qualitatively different response. If they were Jewish, they'd have a qualitatively different response. Why? Because there's a deep racism there. They don't believe a Palestinian life has the same value as a Jewish life. And that is spiritually sick. It's pathetic. And I would be saying exactly the same thing if it were happening to Jews. It's shame on the Democratic Party. But if they think that somehow they can proceed by turning their backs on the precious humanity of Palestinian brothers and sisters, shame on them. We will raise our voices consistently and constantly with a moral and spiritual vigor.
Thank you so much for coming.
All right, brother. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm running so late, but I'm so blessed to be here. Oh, I apologize for running so late, but thank you for being so patient.
Thank you for this.
Good man, coming out. Good man. How you doing, though, brother?
Another day. Another day for us to fight, right?
Go get them.
Entire lifetime civil rights activist, a legend, and a leader, Dr. Cornell West.
Each and every one of us have to make a decision deep inside our own hearts and minds and souls that we are willing to make a sacrifice. We refuse to be well adjusted to injustice. We refuse to be well adapted to indifference. And there is no way that actual genocide, ethnic cleansing can be taking place and people can act as if that's normal or natural or turn their backs. We will continually interrupt. We will continually disrupt. We will continually ensure that a light is perennially cast on the precious humanity of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. This is commitment. This is devotion. We have a calling, which means we will stick together, fight together, laugh together, struggle together, but we are going to make sure there's an end of the occupation. So my word to you, don't get discouraged. Stay encouraged. Be of great courage.
Everyone. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes until give folks until the hour to come into the room. So thank you guys for joining us. Behind me, you're getting a preview of some new graphics. So I won't be able to talk much about it because it's still in sketch. But if you guys can drop in the chat where you're from, and then also there should be a question and answer session down there. But I'm sure we'll get into that as we start. So just wanted to say hi, let you guys know we'll be getting started shortly here.
Greetings, everyone. So glad that you are with us today. I'm your master of ceremony. My name is Okoti Singleton. And again, I'm so glad that you took the time to join us today for what we are calling and so proud to present the Justice for All National Committee pre-launch rally. And so we are deeply honored to have you join us. This is a righteous endeavor, and as we work together, we usher in a new era of truth, justice, and love. So, as we're gathered here in this celebration, our collective commitment to profound transformation, we're laying the groundwork for a movement rooted in unyielding belief that democracy is not merely about voting, it's a way of life infused with compassion, courage, and conviction. So, ahead of our agenda, I just want to go ahead and go through some housekeeping rules for this webinar today. We ask that you keep your mics turned off until it's time for a question and answer. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see an icon for a question and answer. Go ahead and place your questions there. And at that time, when we have our question and answer session, we'll read your questions. And then we'll also ask you, if you want to, go ahead and unmute your mic, ask your questions out loud. And so, other housekeeping rules, keep your comments in the chat respectful. Place your name in the chat and your state that you're that you're residing in. And we want you guys to be relaxed and take in the information as we plan to move forward. I'm excited. And with that, I want to play an introductory video for us, just to get us all in the mood again. One moment, please.
My dear brother, Al Sharpton, God bless his soul. He gave a talk a couple of months ago and he said, Martin Luther King Jr. stood up on the mountaintop and I'm going to tell you what he saw. What did he see, Brother Sharpton? He saw Black President Obama. He saw Kamala Harris. He saw Black professors. He saw Black doctors. I said, Sharpton, quit lying. That ain't what Martin saw. What did he see, Brother West? I don't know what he saw, but he didn't see that. What he probably saw was more pharaohs in different colors who pose as if they're on the cutting edge for justice, but simply rationalize and justify the crimes of the empire and the crimes of predatory capitalism and the crimes that lose sight of the humanity of many people who've been hated and terrorized and traumatized.
I support Cornel West because we don't get no realer.
There's no way I'm going to vote again for the lesser evil.
Any candidate or any politician that actually supports genocide, I want nothing to do with them.
And empires come and empires go. Usually it's military overreach. The United States now has 62 cents for every dollar spent for the military. We don't need 800 military units around the world. We don't need 130 countries for special operations. We don't need a military budget that has the next 8 countries combined still less than our military budget.
People are tired of fear. They're tired of people trying to govern in fear.
I think it's about time that we change our current system.
Boundless resources when it comes to imperial wars, but let's talk about our children's education. Let's talk about our workers' wages that are livable. Let's talk about our citizens gaining access to safe communities and decent housing. Let's talk about free health care. Let's talk about free education. We don't have a penny.
It's nice to hear someone who isn't lying to you for once.
I mean, he's the only candidate speaking truth to power.
And he doesn't follow the capitalist logic that undergirds both of these parties.
That's the war priorities that reinforces the worst of an empire unraveling. That says that I say, I want to be head of the American empire in order to dismantle the American.
And Cornell West gives us vision. He makes us excited about the possibilities of a nation and what it could look like.
I want to abolish poverty. I don't want a liberal version of it. I don't want a conservative version of it. I want to abolish homelessness across the board. We could do that quickly.
Both parties agree on increasing military spending. Both parties don't want to abolish poverty and homelessness.
If we can abolish poverty and homelessness.
And we are ready for that. We are long overdue to have somebody
who understands the people and understands what goes on.
We have deep solidarity because we are committed to the wretched of the earth. We want to turn the world upside down and put poor and working people at the center of it.
He's revolutionary. He's going to completely upend the stagnant society that we currently have.
And we need him in office and vote Mr. Dr. Cornell West.
The revolution will not be televised.
Okay, welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. And here to give a brief overview of Justice for All Party National Committee, we give you our very own brother Israel.
Hi, everyone. How are you? So good to see so many of you. Wonderful faces. It's an exciting day for us. So many of the folks in this room were critical in achieving the ballot access victories that we did across the country. And in that spirit, a promise that we maintain the entirety of this past election season, I should say, was that this was simply a moment in a movement and that there would be legacy to follow this, that we would not pretend that the fight ended with electoral politics, and we would ensure that we stood on the shoulders of all the work that was done and the work that has been done for decades and centuries before us in the fight for freedom and justice for and working class folks. So to that end, January 5th was not, I think I said this at some meeting around that time, that in my opinion, it was a commencement. And as such, we have continued in that way. So January 6th, we met, and so November 6th, we met, and November 7th, and every day thereafter, working towards this to ensure that we have the proper foundation and the proper stability to ensure that our moment turns into a legacy. That this is a lasting moment. And to that end, I've had the pleasure of speaking with many of you over the last few weeks, and will continue to do so I can get through the entirety of the list at this onset and have one-on-ones with regional folks, as well as folks who are fighting for economic justice and reparations and educational justice, Black maternal justice, rights for immigrants. We are working on a technology pillar because we understand that with the gains in technology, it will displace a lot of folks from work and will affect foreign working class folks disproportionately, as these changes often do. Sex worker justice is something that is near and dear to our heart, and we are working in conjunction with partners across the country who work in unions and actually deal with the issues associated to ensure that we have a policy that helps and does not hurt, as so many other laws and policies have done over the years. And to that point, we want to give a voice to all of those that are voiceless. So Mike McCorkle, the legal eagle, the international legal eagle, I should say. I'm not going to embarrass him, but I was embarrassed reading his resume today, which even though we worked together for 17 months, I hadn't seen. With that being said, Mike has been hard at work in contact with the FEC, finding out what is the best path for us to move forward. And that's what this meeting is about today. What are those paths? And in large part, you are a part of that. I'm going to give you a brief preview and tell you that the ask will be to continue the work that you did throughout for ballot access, but in this case for moving from person and personality and presidential politics to policy and party, and about making real changes on a granular level. Um, I want us to focus on dog catchers. Like, I think that should be like our first place. I want the person who's angry because their dog was pepper sprayed and should not have been, and they want to remove the person, whoever is sitting in that seat in their local area. And if we can strengthen ourselves in these local nodes, if we can centralize and democratize um, the power so that it is folks dealing with the issues that are closest to them in their local areas on a day-to-day basis. Um, then when we need greater regional force, we have those nodes to connect in state races and national, of course, and we will get into all of those things in the coming weeks. So my ask for you is going to be to meet here with us week by week for the next few Saturdays as we prepare for a soft launch on February 17th, and also preparing for a full convention this summer, TBD, TBA. You will in large part be a part of shaping what those things look like. Dr. West always wanted a more improvisational party so that everyone gets a chance to speak their voice and no one is deciding for you. And, I'm of the old school that all politics are local. So we definitely want to amplify those voices in the local areas. But there are some guidance, some bylaws, and other things that effectively this steering committee will serve as we build out, as we grow, and as we establish ourselves eventually as a qualified national political party, the Justice for All political party, that is. But what is that party but a collection of various groups, which are a collection of people? And so keeping humanity at the forefront is quintessential and most important to us. So I thank you guys for being here. I'm going to ask you to be here with us again next week. Dr. West will be joining us next week to share some thoughts. But we wanted to essentially get orientation out the way today. And then when we get here next week, we can start delineating. But I really wanted to start this off, since it is people led, as more of a town hall question and answering session for me, for Mike, for Sister Choti, who is Akuti, excuse me, who has served as chief of staff in this transition period, diligently meeting with me daily. David, who has built programs and helped us on the IT portion for the entirety of the election. Windra, who has been responsible for emailing many millions of folks on our behalf, both for merchandise and fundraising, but also in our ballot access fight for the California JFA. If I'm missing your name, please forgive me. Laszlo Barr, who's the wonderful graphic artist who is working on a revamp of our merchandise store in conjunction with my wife Elvia, who's the only reason that I'm functional aside from my God and my parents. And then two, who's a genius of retail and merchandising, and who has been willing enough to share that genius with us in a relaunch of what merchandise and things will look like moving forward. So I'm telling you all this to let you know that there are teams working diligently to ensure that we not only launch, but we launch on a strong foundation, and we take advantage of being really in an arena where most folks are not as active as we most certainly will be. So that is my call, that you can be here with us next Saturday. And that also in between all of those groups, all of those meetings, all of those folks that you collected in petitions, all of those folks who you met with week in and week out, that you start activating those folks and let them know that we're here and we're ready to rock. As I like to say oftentimes, irrespective of who's at the head of Empire, of the Uniparty, as I call it, Empire marches on, and so too must we. Empire does not take holidays or breaks. We can, we believe in spirit and connecting, but you get the point of it, is that in this battle, there's a certain focus and there is a certain level of discipline that is necessary to truly move grassroots change against such a mighty foe, but it's doable. And we're going to be the ones to do it but we have to be the ones to do it. So with that being said, I don't know if I'm shifting it back to you, sister. Am I sending it to Mike McCorkle? But that is the conclusion of my comments. I remit the remainder of my time. Love you guys.
Brother Mike, you have the mic.
Well, that's a heck of an act to follow. Thank you, thank you for the invitation. It's good to be with you all once again. Now post campaign and in this transition period. I hope the time since the election and since our last meeting has treated you well. I looked through the participant list and saw a lot of names of don't take this the wrong way, but you're already becoming old friends. You know, when you've been through as much as we have this past year, it counts, I think, for more than just a regular year. So Ashton and Joe and so many others, it's good to be with you all again and to do what I can to help with setting up for a new national party. So what can I do for you? Are there questions, or should I just begin at the beginning?
Yeah, if you would, just sort of catch us up on where we are, you know, how we look to stand up and help the folks in individual spaces, and basically what is the macro vision forward.
Okay. To the extent that I know those things, I can share the information. I tend to have the technical knowledge and sort of, I think of myself as working below decks in the engine room to keep the vessel safe and you know, ready for its voyage, while all of you are the people who decide where we're going and, you know, what we're going to do on the way there and when we get there. So there will be a lot of talk, I think, in the months ahead about establishing state parties. Some of you, we've already worked on that kind of thing in the course of the campaign, because a state party is going to be where the action is in terms of nominating, putting people on the ballot. So that's going to be a big part of the project, is trying to get a committee set up in each state. And just like ballot access was 51 different labyrinths to get through to figure out what the process is, we'll actually have more than that, more jurisdictions than that. But it's a similar kind of thing where it's a different race, different kind of thing in every jurisdiction. In some places, it's very easy. Some places where you might not expect it would be so easy. And in other places where you might think it would be a pretty easy and open jurisdiction, it can be tremendously difficult. And in some, I mean, New Jersey, literally every party there, other than the two big ones, has had to sue the state of New Jersey for recognition. Right? That seems, so we're going to have to maybe threaten our way onto the ballot in some places. So it's going to be a mixed fight in all of those places. But unlike organizations that are just starting out in one place and going it alone, going through all this wilderness on their own, we're going to have state parties that are going to be standing up all over the country. And in the course of doing that, the expectation is, I believe, ordinarily in a political party, is that as you set things up in your state, somebody from your state, maybe multiple somebodies from your state, is going to be asked to come and sit at a national table as well. And those are the kinds of questions that I think you all should be talking to one another about, not just with us at you know, the transition team, but amongst yourselves about how should that look, how should it work, how many people should be on the national committee, because you have to take into account perhaps the proportions. You know, you may, if you want to do it by population, should Wyoming have as much representation as California, or should you do it maybe by the number of participants in a state, you know, or the same number of delegates, but the delegates have weighted votes, all of those kinds of questions. Thank goodness I don't have to answer those for you, not today, but you all will need to make decisions about what you want the organization to look like. And the aim is to have a committee established and to turn over control of the national party to that committee so that the democracy in our organization flows up through the state organizations that you're being asked to build and results in representation and participation at the very highest levels of the party. So we're working to establish some of the legal characteristics, some of the things that we'll need to have in place in order to give those over to the party. So some of that construction is happening now. I don't know if you want me to get too much into that, filing of the paperwork and that sort of thing, but we're taking all the responsible steps to ensure that this group will be indisputably, ultimately, I mean, you all will be the steering committee, and I expect that many of you will also find your way onto our national committee. And so we're ensuring that you will have the legal title to that claim of the Justice for All National Committee, and that will be all set up as far as the federal government is concerned and ready to go with setting up the national party. And that, I think, will be a mechanism that helps you, like I said, as opposed to the group that's trying to do it all by themselves in isolation. Is the national party should be a way to sort of mediate and multiply the force and the energy, exchanging good ideas, and people from one state may be making calls to another state. There may be petition drives again and that sort of thing, but we'll be much better off going through this together, and having a national core will be a vital part of that. So welcome to that work if you are so inclined. And we will be diving into some bylaws and charter questions and things like that, I imagine, in the coming weeks.
Thank you, sir. That is lovely. With that, I believe we'll go and field some questions. And if you guys don't have any questions, I mean, we did everything really, really right. And I'll let you have the rest of your Saturday so you can join us here next week. So I'm gonna shift it to the MC. And thank you for that, Mike.
Sure.
Yes, and thank you both for giving us that insight. I'm once again excited after hearing that. Once again, Justice for All Party on the way. So with that, Rafi, you have your hands raised. Go ahead.
I think
You might need to raise them as a panelist. Let's see here. Ah, got it. Okay.
Got it.
I think you should be. Yeah, all right.
It's giving me instructions which are ambiguous, but I'll try. Hi, my name is
Hello.
Rafi. I'm from, well, I live in Everett, Washington, the site of a hanging of a wobbly organizer many, many years ago. My grandfather was a wobbly, and I come out of the labor movement, as well as the 60s protest years. I'm old. So I witnessed firsthand and participated in protesting the Democrats' abandonment of the working class. So to me, neoliberalism, obviously neocon now too, is the big issue. Incidentally, when you said engine room, I jumped out of my skin. I used to work in engine rooms, including in the engine rooms of the Washington State ferries. For me, that is not a mere metaphor. So anyway, that's my contribution. And by the way, I used to manage political campaigns in the days when the Democrats still had a rank and file party. We won because we had numbers of people, and it wasn't easy. Imagine having, say, a Catholic men's organization along with women's liberation people, ecologists, and developers. You get it. Anyway, all in the same room. But we all knew it was for the common good. Nobody got exactly what they wanted, but we all had something. And that's the difference in politics from then and now. And when you talk populism, I listen. By the way, the Democratic people like James Carville and Rahm Emanuel are now making populist noises. Do we believe them? Oh, I don't think so.
You
Not
are
at
correct.
all.
Anyway, thank you. And yes, I understand the work that it takes to actually do on the ground local organizing.
That's beautiful. And you're the folks who we need. You're the folks who we're calling for. And
Yeah.
that's the spirit that we want to raise this up, you know, truth, justice,
Exactly.
and love leading that. And to your point, rank and file folks deciding. You know, I've had many conversations over the weeks since then about bylaws and structures and how should folks function. And my answer has always been that will be decided by those local groups. Will provide some type of structure. And of course, we'll be here for feedback and for mediation and any of those things. But ultimately, democracy is not neat when it's done properly, right? It's a bunch of people in a room fighting for what they believe, but fighting, understanding that everyone is fighting in the same spirit of good faith.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
so that fire, that ethos that you bring is very much what we need. And I'll leave some room for anyone else on the panel if they want to jump in there.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
And Joseph, you have your hand raised.
Here. Okay, Joseph, you're next up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I want to say hello to all.
Hello.
This is Joseph, and I'm from New York City. And this is really my first call for the National. I just want to report in, basically since November the 5th, we have a small group of us has still been building community, going to various events. And my question is, I'm looking at the midterm elections. Are we, as a state, expect to go forward and sign papers with the State Board of Elections and a whole host of others? I'm confused in that. We had limited contact with the National.
You know, absolutely. Honestly, the National didn't exist until about 48 hours ago. So that's why there was such a short turnaround on this meeting. Mike and I have been fighting very hard to be able to talk to you publicly because there were some legalese that we had to cut through in order to be able to do that. One, I want to thank you and that team there in Manhattan and Harlem for all of the hard work that you guys did throughout the entirety of the campaign. And I have conversations that I plan to have with you in the next couple coming weeks. And I'll put out some requests for some phone calls about fundraising and development and local organizing there. And I'm due to be up in that area soon. So I'll be calling on you maybe to be a host while I'm there. With that being said, I think you have a great question, but as well outside of my wheelhouse. So I'm going to defer to Mike and
Nerd powers activated. Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And it did take us some conversations with the FEC and so forth to figure out the correct way to go forward. It's like buttoning a shirt. If you get it wrong at the start, then the whole thing's going to be a mess. But you're exactly right. With both of the things, it sounds like you've got on your mind is exactly, I think, what is needed for party building in the next stage. For one thing, there is the community building, and out of a community, hopefully a committee will arise as well. And then ballot access in the 2026 cycle. And even if we've got people in Virginia, and I think maybe in New Jersey as well, in Virginia, political party status depends on results in state legislative races, and they do those in odd-numbered years. So it's already upon us if you're in Virginia. But certainly in the 2026 cycle, nationally, what I think would be beneficial to Justice for All as a national party would be to run as many federal candidates, as many congressional and US Senate candidates as can be run. Right now, we're filing the organization with the FEC as a national party committee, but it will be what is called an unqualified committee by the FEC. So it doesn't get all of the bells and whistles, all of the prizes of an actual national party committee that the two big parties have got. And here's a secret too, they each have 3 of those committees, so they could just blow through all the money, because that's the big advantage of having qualified national party committees, is it opens up the channels so that the national party can fund future congressional candidates and can fund a future presidential candidate like Dr. West. So it takes the load off. It allows us to share the burden nationally more easily. But to get that qualification, there's a bunch of FEC stuff that's required. But one of the biggest things is that they want to see federal candidates run by state parties that are part of this national party that's trying to get qualified. And it's a pretty sizable number that we need to run probably 14 or 15 federal candidates, if possible, in 2026 in at least half a dozen different states. And it needs to be spread all over the country. So everybody needs to play a part. And for each of those 14 or 15 or more federal candidates, we're going to need to raise more than $5,000. That's the real numbers of what it will take to get us another serious step closer to being a qualified national party in time for the presidential campaign in 2028. So building the community that you're doing is good. And in the course of doing that, maybe keeping an eye out for people who would be good candidates, people who would be willing to step up and run for a seat in Congress potentially in the next couple of years. And all of that will have to take shape together all at once as we proceed through these next few months. But it sounds like what you've got on your mind is exactly what is needed.
Can I follow up with a question, Israel? And I'm not clear on it, but it's about getting 50,000 signatures, let's say in New York State, in order to have the party on the ballot. And then there was another question. Yeah, what can you tell me about that? Or is that the cart before the horses? Am I wrong in thinking of this election cycle to collect 50,000 signatures based on the name Justice for All party?
If there's the support there, no, you're looking down the road some ways, but I think that that's a valuable skill in this kind of work. I'm glad that you're doing it. You're going to have both how the state of New York views whether or not you're a state political party, and whether the federal government, the FEC, regards you as a state political party. The road to getting the state status, like I said, in some places it's very easy. In a place like New York, it's very, very difficult. And many of you have gone through the process just this past election cycle of trying to get a group qualified as a political party. It can be pretty difficult. If we've got the numbers and if we can do it, then obviously that's the direction that we want to go. But as far as the FEC is concerned, even if the state says you're not a party yet, you're just a political group or a qualified political organization, they have all these names for groups that are not quite to minor party status. But as far as the FEC is concerned, if you got somebody on the ballot for Congress or the US Senate, that's tougher because that's statewide. But if you got somebody on the ballot in just one congressional district, and you've got you look like a political party, you've got a state committee that's running things, you put one person on the ballot and raise $5,000 for them, and the FEC will consider you a state party. We have to do some paperwork and stuff, but they'll consider you, the federal government considers you a state party if you do those things, even if you are not at political party status as far as the state is concerned. Because believe it or not, it's even harder to get that status. In some states, only the top 2 parties in the presidential election are even recognized as political parties. That's how much of a duopoly that they control on these things. So you have to kind of keep both aspects, the federal and the state, in mind at the same time. So we'll look at, for either one, we'll want a committee, because the FEC also wants to see a party structure, which is representation from the participants in selecting a state committee and so forth. And if we've got the resources and the numbers and the support for it to go for party status, New York is a tough one. It is. I've had to work on that one before. But if we've got the resources, we can go for it. And if we only have the resources to try to get enough signatures to put somebody on the ballot in one district here or there, maybe a couple of districts, then we can do that. And that is still a very meaningful step forward for the party, even if it doesn't impress the state of New York much. They're hard to impress.
And if I may, Joseph, was that an answer to your question? I want to make sure before I hop in there.
That was helpful, and it's many more, but I won't take up this meeting for the many other questions we have.
We'll talk again.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll have many other meetings. And then, like I say, let's put something on the books to offline. But I did want to piggyback on what it is that Mike said there, just to add to that, that's the real work of now, right? So the people building that you're doing, that's what's going to make that possible. And focusing hyperlocally, in this case, from our standpoint as a national party committee, your local representative, if you're thinking about, okay, where it is, and this is for everyone in here, who should I be focusing on? Who can I be scouting that will be most helpful to us establishing ourselves as a qualified national party, would be your state representative. So if you're thinking about who are we targeting, like I say, I like dog catcher too. So please run the Justice for All dog catcher in your local city. But if we're talking about the pragmatic, practical steps towards our collective goal, that will be running federal candidates and at least a dozen to 20 or so states across the country. How does that work? It's going to work just like what you're doing now. Part of my coming to New York, it's not just to visit my aunt, but part of that conversation is you introduced me to those groups that we discussed a lot long ago, of folks who are like-minded and like-aligned, so that we can do true grassroots coalition building. And the advantage is that we're not concentrating that in 6 months, under a gun of a highly competitive campaign. We're sparring now. We're not in the Olympics at this moment. So, this is the time to gain our strength in between now and then. Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, I'm told, that's a race that's coming up in 26 as well. So, we want to apply as much pressure as we can. Now, from my standpoint, from a tactical standpoint, how do I see? And ultimately, this is what the steering committee will do. This is what these meetings will be about. These are the questions and ideas that we will debate and come to a consensus of some sort on to move forward. But if you're asking what my vision for it is, we had a lot of folks who worked towards attaining ballot access, setting up parties, getting party designation. I think it only makes sense that we should first secure those things which we have. So I heard someone say, oh man, grab all you can all you grab, and then sit on the can. So that's the first portion of that. The next thing is there are some places that are more low hanging fruit. Massachusetts requires 50 people for a party designation. Feel free to jump in here anytime, Mike, if I'm speaking things that I don't know. If I'm hallucinating, as we say in our AI world, blame it on my head and not my heart. But Massachusetts requires 50 people for a party designation, which is my understanding that we did achieve that. And so now for a full party, it would need a group of 1,000 people, I am told. And so that might look a lot different in 30 days, but in 2 years, I think that's something that we can build on and build towards, and then ultimately coalition building. So right now we're talking very much about regional locations. All politics are local. Some things are just necessary for us to be functioning and to be considered functioning by whatever authorities there may be. That being said, no one is really here about ballot access. We're here about changing the world, changing our neighborhoods, changing the lives of those that we love and those around the world who are being oppressed. And, that change really comes with connecting with people on those issues that matter to you most. those issues of economic freedom or healthcare or reparations or um, prisons being built in your town and places, immigration, justice, many of the things that we are all here assigned for, the policy platform, if you will, connecting with those groups, those passion groups in your neighborhood, around your state, the connections of the groups that you're on. Our policy, our platform is large enough that there is someone in a group that you're in who has an issue that aligns. And if we can collect enough hands, then we can move anything. So with that, I'll kick my soapbox to the side and leave room for us. We got a couple other here with questions. Oh man, we're growing in questions. Look at y'all. So let's bring up Farhim Hakim.
It's Farheen Hakim, yes.
Pardon me, thank you.
Um, yeah, no, my question is, so what I'm hearing are, I'm just really curious about the specifics, and I'm hearing that there's going to be, that those of us that are here today, there's going to be a commitment of meeting once a week, on Saturdays to help grow this. Um, and I just don't understand the connection quite yet about the other email that was sent out about regional site officer or regional coordinator. And I wanted to know if there was, is that like a separate meeting, or is that something that you all are um, asking us what to do?
No, so when it comes, all of the regional activity will in large part walk hand in hand or be in cooperation with the work that's being done in this room. So essentially, we're starting up a party that doesn't exist. So what does that local organizing look like, and who better to help shape that than ultimately the people who will be doing it in their regions? So this was in large part an all call for folks who are looking to be regional leaders, because if we're standing up a party in Arkansas, we need folks on the ground in Arkansas who are meeting there about their local issues. This meeting is a limited series about steering and setting up what the future of that party looks like. However, the work that stops here in 6 weeks or so, how that work continues is ultimately you're laying the pathway for what that work will be on the ground in local regions. And I'll leave room if Mike wanted to hop in there too. And let me know, please clarify if I'm not answering your question.
I mean, I want to hear what Mike has to say.
So specifically, this was tied into the regional groups, was it is? I was responding to a typed question as well.
Yes, no, it was both. When we sent out the all call for email, it listed both regional or policy um, leaders. So folks to, let's say, head up JFA Houston or to be in charge of the Black clergy group or whatever it may be.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, a national party is ultimately just a large coalition of these kinds of interconnected communities joined together by voluntary association. And, when it's done right, the party comes from the ground up to the top. It shouldn't be a top-down endeavor. So any sort of local activity, we would hope to coalesce also into state groups, and we may do regional groups as well. I'm not really hands-on in terms of how we're organizing the effort, but it makes sense to do some regional groups as well in order that we can ensure that everybody is able to assist one another. There are a few constants when it comes to party formation all over the country, that if you have to do much of anything, it'll be form a committee, maybe do a petition, and maybe put a candidate on the ballot. And so there will be enough common tasks, no matter where you are in the country, that coordination between the states, I think, will allow people to help one another out. If they're all doing similar petitions, you can share good ideas for circulator practices and things like that. And just briefly, I'll say as well that when it comes time for the National Party to write a letter to the FEC, that's how it works. Eventually, we'll write a letter to them and say, do you recognize us as a qualified national party that opens up the big pipelines for the presidential candidates and so forth? One of the big things that they're going to want to see is, do you have state parties set up around the country that have put people on the ballot and that have raised money for them? And those states need to be distributed around the country. They shouldn't be just gathered together in one little region. And so that's another significant part of having some regional coordination to ensure that even if not every state in the Northwest, for example, is able to get a state committee up and running, get a state party established, put somebody, even if every one of them is not, if we have regional groups that can focus on getting one or two of the states in each of the regions to that status, then that will advance the general cause pretty effectively, I think. Is that responsive?
Yeah, it's helpful. I did have a follow-up question, but I don't want to take too much time. And so if the idea is that we're supposed to be building up a state, I live in Wisconsin, for example, and I building up a Wisconsin state party, and the goal, if we start now, is so that we can have federal candidates to run in 2026. And so if we have local elections that are 2025, try to get people to run as a JFA in their party line, and then eventually get, our a U.S. Senate candidate and a couple of congressional candidates and a couple of other things. I mean, heck, we can even do school board this year, like, which is a step above dog catcher, but and this is like the vision that is being explained to us today. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. This is that's exactly what this is. This is the I gave the scenario of the Lord of the Rings rally cry from Aragon, right, in the second movie when Gondor is being attacked. That there may be a day that the race of men shall fall, but not this day. Um, that's what this is. This is to say you guys did a lot of work and we want to continue that work and we want you to activate locally and we are here to support you from dog catcher to the next president of the United States. And we are prepared and equipped to do all those things that are necessary in between to ensure that we have a solid foundation. That most of our challenges came from fundraising and from lawyers being well funded by the opposition. That's where most of our challenges were during this campaign. And so, and Mike is probably over there shedding that single tear because he was at the forefront of many of those battles and can attest to what it is that we went through. So from my standpoint, is that I've always wanted us to be set up with as secure as possible so that when we do announce, when we do have dog catchers and school board members and Congress folks with Justice for All across the country, most folks are starting normally in one place. You know, we have the benefit of 17 months of hard work, hundreds of thousands of people in support, millions donated, you know, all of that infrastructure is there and we are just simply assembling the parts and turning on the machine. And we here are those main parts of that system. So I hope that is an answer to your question. Feel free to follow up. We'll be here next week. So you guys can always bring questions, but I do want to make sure I get a chance to go through that long list there.
Okay, so now we'll move on to Joanne. You have a question or comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear
Okay.
you.
Oh, okay, good. I was wondering because both Cornell and Stein ran great campaigns, but they compete against each other. And I don't want to see people voting for the lesser of two evils because evil is evil. And I knew to register for the Green Party for Jill Stein, but what is Cornell's West party name? Are you starting a new party name? And how do you get people to register? Because you have to, unite, because you guys are both great candidates. I'm sorry, that's my question.
Oh, thank you for your wonderful question. And we appreciate that. To that point, I'll address the first part, and then Mike, I think the second part is more so you. I agree. There's a lot of infighting in the midst of a heated battle, but that battle is over. I see our enemy, if there is an enemy, to be the uniparty. I don't even use duopoly. I don't make a distinction between the two. It's just the same side to the same walking body of empire. So uh, to that point, thank you. And we have great respect for the Green Party and what they've done. And Ralph Nader has been a great friend to Dr. West. So essentially, we are starting I don't know if we're starting a brand new venture as much as growing on the venture that we launched during the campaign itself. But I'm going to go ahead and mute and let Mike take the second part of that question.
Yeah, I can tell you that on our ballot access fights, we often had the assistance and support of the Greens and some other political parties. We also, behind the scenes, I had developed an acquaintance with the Kennedy campaign's lawyers, so that every time they spent a lot of money and got a really good court ruling, they would make sure that it was broad enough that it covered us too, so that we could ride their coattails without having to pay all those lawyer bills. And so there is a lot of room, I think, for cooperation, not just in ballot access, but for small parties to work cooperatively together, not running candidates directly against one another. If you look at or ask Italo or our North Carolina friends about the sort of unity coalition that they did with the other small groups there in North Carolina, we actually had a number of minor parties other than JFA that endorsed Dr. West for president as well. So there's some real possibilities there for coalition building, even if we are building a separate vessel from some of these other parties. And in terms of registration, in some places it'll be very easy. In California, they could have renewed their process 6 months ago and already been registering people again to try to get to the target there. But I don't think they've, well, I've seen no evidence that they filed anything with the state. So it's easy enough to do it. In some states, though, there is no such thing as registering with a political party. Your political party status comes from if you voted in a primary or something like that. So that's what I mean when I said earlier that it's going to be a slightly different puzzle in every single jurisdiction to figure out how it is that we give folks a chance to belong to something that the state may not regard as a political party initially, but that is built to take on that form, that has a state committee that has the ability to nominate people for office and support them. And regardless of the status that they have in state law from one place to another, if it looks like a political party like that, then it is fine for it to participate in the national party as a state chapter, even while we work on the legal part of it together. So
that seems a bit unfair because Republicans and Democrats can register, so it leaves, no room for another party. And maybe something can be done nationally, because before you have to fight to get on the ticket, so people can register.
Actually, in some states, no members of any party register their party affiliation with the state. There are some states where that's just simply not done at all. And it has been a problem in some states. I think Indiana might have a bill that is being introduced that might change how it works there. But in states where you do have registration, you're right that it is always just coincidentally somehow easier to register if you want to be a Democrat or a Republican. But if you wanted to be a member of Justice for All in California, for example, we heard from a lot of people that the counties weren't getting the paperwork right and weren't counting them. So there will be fights and struggles ahead. And after this past year and the stuff that I saw them throw at us around the country, Wisconsin was where they tried to throw us off the ballot because there was allegedly a staple missing. 2 pages that they claimed had to be stapled and weren't stapled. So they wanted us to throw out thousands of signatures for that. So we're going to have some fights like that to take on in the future. But we won almost every one of the fights that we did have. We won way more than they expected us to. And we're just getting started. So we'll work through it together.
So in my community, I can look to see if there's a Justice for All party I can sign up for, because as you're working from the bottom up, is that something that people should be looking for to see if there is a Justice for All party on, that we can register for? Is that what the name of it is? Justice for All?
Yeah, that will be the name of the national party, and state parties may have some variation in their names. It doesn't have to match exactly, because we might have some of the minor parties that endorse Dr. West join the coalition as well, and they'll have a whole process in their state law to try to change their names if they want to do that. But like the Minnesota Democratic Party is not called the Minnesota Democratic Party, it's the Democratic Farmers and Laborers Association or something kind of weird like that. So, and I don't know that we've got one in Wisconsin yet, but the fact that you're here suggest, well, you're very close to the 1, 2, 3, not it. If you ask one more question, you might become the state chair. You have to be very careful on a meeting like this.
Thanks for your time.
You have to fight Joel down there in Wisconsin for that position, but I definitely watched the fight though. Yeah, Henry, I believe you're up next, brother. Oh, I'm sorry, Henry. Before you go there, I just want to let folks know. I know I scheduled this for an hour. We're coming up on that hour, so I don't want anyone to feel beholden to staying immediately. About 24 hours, if you registered for this meeting, which you're here, so you registered, you'll receive an email with a link to next week's meeting. So if anyone needs to leave, I don't want you to be overly polite and decide that you have to stay the whole time, but I do want to do my best to get through all of the questions, and that includes the panelists as well. So you will automatically receive a link to next week's meeting, and we'll have more granular details for you at that time. And I am told that Dr. West will be joining us, so hopefully to see you there. Henry, if you would, please, brother.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks,
welcome.
Israel. So Henry here from New York. Do a little bit of work with Joseph and everybody over there. My question is just why is the strategy on ballot access instead of building power locally? It seems very reminiscent of like the Green Party versus I know in New York, there's just so many opportunities to influence things and, get public financing matching and stuff, and then use the fusion voting system.
No.
And also, have you guys thought about being a C4? Was that a discussion that we can endorse candidates or, run them in uncontested races, something like that? And just a comment, I'd love to also see some breakout groups so I could connect with some other folks that are on this call. Thanks.
Oh, awesome. I'll answer the first part of that, and then I'll leave all that legalese for Mike to pick up on. But I clearly have miscommunicated, because when I say dog catcher, I mean dog catcher. The only reason I am mentioning the state representative is because that is what's necessary to not state, I'm sorry, House of Representative member, federal candidate. That is what's necessary to establish ourselves as a qualified party. But I truly believe that all this power should be localized. I don't know what's going on in your local district. I don't know what's going on sometimes on the street next to mine. So the folks who are there, who know the folks there, who knows who's in your neighborhood working towards change and what that change should look like, what those policies should look like. Even if I could somehow figure that out for New York State, I wouldn't be able to figure that out for 51 jurisdictions across the country. And then also, the smaller breakdowns amongst there. So we definitely want it hyper local, but we also understand that we can, I was told not to relay it to blockchain, so I won't talk about Bitcoin and the decentralized network and how that power keeps it from shutting down if one node goes down. I'm not going to discuss that at all. What I'm going to say is, by us separating and having that decentralized power in places, it allows us to be able to supply each other with time, talent, treasure, and resources. Two, this room alone right now is a mastermind group that you can bring those issues that you're working to and maybe have a solution right there in the room before you leave that meeting. And then three, we have a leg of this stool, which is sort of to provide structure and infrastructure, but how that vine, how that tree grows in your local area is really going to be defined by the folks who are working there to make that change, and ultimately the people who rally behind you to vote or to fight for whatever it is the cause that we're fighting for in that local area under that national spirit. With that, Mike, I know there was some C4 questions and other things that I'll let you grab. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The fundamental distinguishing characteristic of a political party versus any other kind of organization, even a PAC or anything like that, is it puts people on the ballot. And I work with C4s all over the country and have for years. And they have some influence, but I think I can't agree that they have real power. They have enough power to get a message out and keep the wheels turning on some of them. They raise enough money to keep the fundraising requests going out. But in terms of how much real power they hold, there are a lot of C4s I know out there that are that are pushing for and advocating for good things. That's what a C4 is for anybody who doesn't know. A 501c4 tax exempt organization exists for the purpose of advocacy. But there aren't a lot of good things actually happening in this world that I've noticed. There's a lot of great stuff being advocated for, but it's not happening. And if they really had power, it would be happening, not just being talked about. So the reason that we're working on a political party here in this meeting, and there's always room for advocacy. I mean, I work with a number of C3s and C4s that do that exact kind of work. But political party work is inevitably electoral, ultimately. That's what distinguishes it from this other kind of work. And that is where power comes from in our system, is actually putting people at the table where decisions are being made. It's influential to have people outside who, that definitely has its place in things. But ultimately, you're either, if you're not at the table, they say you're on the menu. And the job of a party is to get people elected and put them at the table so that you're not always outside the building trying to have influence. So, and the reason why the focus today actually is on that electoral aspect of the party, because the community part of it is huge and is the beginning of a path that ultimately leads to a focus on electoral ballot access. But I was asked to come in and talk about the national party status, and that is tied up inevitably with these electoral questions. If Israel invites the campaign finance folks to come talk to us, they're going to talk a lot about money, but don't get the impression that that means that this is all about raising money. It's just one aspect of a very complicated enterprise that has many facets to it, and the electoral, the party building, the bylaws, the do's and the don'ts, all of that. That's just one aspect of it. But the community part that you're describing is vitally important, I think, is even a sort of preliminary step that everybody has to begin with before they can try to graduate to these next stages we're talking about.
Can I just respond to that, if I may?
Please.
My thinking with a PAC, a C4, is not so
the same
much
thing.
Advocacy. Not yes, right, not the same thing. But C3 being the nonprofit, that's how I kind of think about most advocacy that's not electoral. C4 being able to be involved in advocacy. So C3s can't be involved in electoral politics. C4s can. The idea with the C4 being we can endorse candidates and support them. We can endorse all sorts of candidates for every different position, use our infrastructure and our talents in our community to support those candidates. They could uphold our values. And similar to the Working Families Party, which has lots of different elected officials in states where they necessarily don't run under the Working Families line. I'm not ideologically with the Working Families Party. I'm just using that as an example.
I've been their lawyer before. Yeah.
If I may, I think we're a collection of advocacy groups. We're a collection of passion-focused people. That's why we're here. And I agree that endorsements and the advocacy portion is extremely powerful. I'm far less politically inclined than I am advocacy inclined. With that being said, it's a means to a necessary end in this case, and part of the functionality will be to engage with C4s and C3s who are already on the ground doing the work and bridge them together into constituency groups, which we'll talk more about in another time, or just sort of really, this is sort of hyper focused on the regional aspect of it, because that is the federal legal portion that we have to do as a matter of pragmatic, necessary work. There's a lot other stuff I'd much rather be working on. I can tell you the same thing with Mike in that regard. But to your point, we will, our hope is to connect groups that are already doing work, and so that we can amplify our concentration. I'm sorry, we can amplify our power by concentrating our light into lasers. But Mike, I don't want to usurp your reply.
No, no, you're exactly right. C3s and especially C4s have got a vital part to play in the whole sort of ecosystem that surrounds a political party. It's never just a party by itself. You also need those C4 groups that are doing advocacy, that bring, you know, the issues to the party and that help a party connect to the electorate. And the PACs that are often run by C4s or sometimes are freestanding, they play an even more active role in intermediating that sort of community and communication. But it's a fundamentally different thing to talk about endorsing candidates versus running candidates. I mean, you want to be a food critic, or do you want to open a restaurant? Because opening, you know, you can choose among the candidates that are being put on offer. But the Working Families Party, they've only ever elected one person who ran against Democrats. They only had one person in this cycle who they ran against the Democrats. So where they have a ballot line, they tend to just be a pressure group within the Democratic Party, which is why they haven't expanded out of states that don't have fusion voting. Fusion voting allows them to be nominally a separate party, but never actually departing from Democratic Party hegemony, so to speak. So the purpose of this effort is to do a political party. And the C4 part is vitally important. It's just, it's a different mission than the political party mission. It's a different machine.
For the Israelites,
Hey.
the question from the question and answer. We have
Oh yes,
Via.
please. She has her hand up too. She might want to
Okay,
give it.
great. Yeah, Via, go ahead. Grab the mic.
Yeah. Hi.
In there.
Blessings and greetings. Happy New Year to all. I just had a question about the state of Oregon because we were under a different party. So are they going to become the justice for all, or are we going to build a party here in the state? And is there somebody coordinating that? How do I get in contact with that person? Et cetera, et cetera. And that's all.
I think those are conversations to be had, but it is part of the tactical plan to coordinate, or at least speak, I should say, with all of those third parties that were generous enough to grant us ballot access. Mike, I don't know if you have. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I can relate as well. Here in Colorado, it's the same thing. Dr. West was nominated by the Unity Party, but I'm not sure if the Unity Party intends to become a part of the Justice for All party. So I've just been encouraging folks here to try to have that conversation with the officers of that party. We don't want them to feel like it's a hostile takeover. I don't think that would be right. It would be unfair to them. So we have to see what the plan is. And, you know, if we are going to go a separate way from them here in Colorado, it doesn't turn them into enemies. We have an approval voting party here that I've been friendly with over the years as well. So we can still work together, not run people directly against one another. In Oregon, I think probably a similar kind of conversation should take place. Just what are their wishes for their party, and you know, and what does everybody want? Because it can be done separately, it can be done together. We had a couple of the state parties that did endorse, that indicated early on that they were very interested. In fact, I had to stop them mid-campaign from changing their name to Justice for All. I was like, it's too soon, we're not ready yet. But that may not be the case with all of these parties. And I hope that if we do wind up going a separate route, that we can maintain some friendly ties and be supportive even while we take that route.
As a follow-up then, not to step on anybody's toes, but would it be best to wait for somebody on the national side to say, hey, we've already spoken with this particular party, we're going to move forward XYZ? Like, I don't know what would be best. Do we wait from somebody from national to let us know how that worked out? Because I'm assuming somebody from national, when the campaign was going, made those arrangements to begin with to get the ballot access. And so even though all politics is local, you don't want to, like you said, break relationships.
No, absolutely. And we have no intention of doing so. The first part of this work is we have to be. And so that's kind of what this meeting is, saying that we are. Even as far as even some of the legal aspects of it, we have to talk about the fact that we are. We have to have these meetings just as part of what the requirements. My next phase will be to reach out to all of those parties and say that we have something that's established, that and make that bridge of what that conversation is. Irrespective thereof, whether we're working with them as friends or not, we still will have local representation in every state. And our hope is that that is friendly. Our hope is that many of these places that already have ballot access will be, or have state parties will be very happy to just join in and change names. But there will be some form of structure there, so setting that up is still necessary, building out lists, and we'll talk a lot more about those details next week about what the actual plan is to move forward and how do we do that, aside from which I've already told a lot of you, which is, hey, reactivate the networks that you have. And I'll let you you had something, Mike?
I was just going to add, I think that's a great idea to do sort of letters of invitation that we're embarking on this, and we wanted to invite you to do this without you feeling compelled to. And then I was just wanted to add that please volunteer me to them as well if they want to talk with me about the national party structure and how they would fit into it if they've got FEC questions or anything like that. I'll probably handle Florida and Mississippi and Nebraska at least.
Yeah. That was my plan, for us to go ahead and do that together. We just hadn't. Okay. I just hadn't even made room for it, but yeah, we'll offline. Yeah, I know,
just
right?
pushing us, isn't she? She's like way ahead of us.
I'm trying. Yeah, I want to get on our ballot so bad. I want to do whatever I can to be facilitating forward movement with this project.
He's been doing that for me for months now, so I expect it of her. So, thank you. Is that a
Yep, I will wait. I'm sorry to mean to interrupt. Thank you. I will see you guys next week for the rest of feedback. So sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and from the
Mr.
Did you want to go ahead?
I'm sorry, I'd already pushed Ashton up. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead, Ashton. You have the mic.
All right. Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. It was great to see everyone, and so thrilled that we're doing this. I guess I don't know. Maybe a lot of this is gonna have to wait for next week, but I might have the driest and most uncompelling question so far. But I mean, the paperwork, being the paper pusher part, is definitely a component of this. So I was because we're kind of at that stage here in Washington, as we're technically a political party, because we got the ballot access, and I think a lot of the conversation seems to be shaping around, are we at that point where we need to start, where we're kind of in a good place? Like, what components are we can start helping out other in a different areas, start allocating resources in that way. So I guess a lot of it is defining what is the bells and whistles, what are the benchmarks, and like what's like the platonic ideal of the political party. And once you've got that, it's time to go build parties and other places. So I guess for me, just if Mike McCorkle has got a bylaws or any kind of like, I'm mostly concerned about the formatting of the all of this stuff. It's like if there's a a document that some like one political party formulates their document in a very particular way, then that's kind of a good standard, and then just generalizing that. But yeah, and then obviously we're not going to be able to get a political party in all 50 states overnight, but I do want people to have that platonic ideal of the political party. So functionally they are that. So the FEC can do whatever they want. So I guess my question would be just if there's like some templates for like the FEC, what like certain documents, and what kind of organization or regulating bodies interact with a political party, like in a general sense. Is it just the FEC, like probably like the IRS, or is there any other component? And so yeah, that'd be my question.
That's definitely a you question, Mike, but also could you let Ashton know about our little idea about that legal group that we talked about as well in answering that?
Yeah, sure. That we're going to try to encourage anybody with any sort of legal background, paralegals, even attorneys, legal assistants, anybody who's worked in that field, to form a sort of working group to be able to be assigned out to help with some of the various states. So that's one of our objectives down the road here as well. Ashton, you have the weird advantage of being in the state of Washington, which uniquely, out of all the jurisdictions, it has like no rules for political parties in Washington. I'm not exaggerating. Like, it doesn't have like crazy rules. That's Texas. It has no rules, which makes it a little bit different. So that's cool, because I think you all are set up as far as the state is concerned. So here's what a state political party looks like structurally in terms of its money. It has 2 bank accounts. National Party won't. It's only allowed to have 1 account. It gets reported to the FEC, and everything that it gets and spends has to live by the federal election rules of who can give and how much they can give and all that sort of thing. State parties have 2 accounts. Eventually, if you're running a federal candidate, running somebody for Congress, then you'll have a federal account, which is your FEC account. And when the time comes to get that set up, we'll have help for you. And you'll want to have help because it's easy enough to set up, but you can't miss your reporting deadlines, or else you can get a fine or something like that. So we'll hopefully be able to get you connected to somebody who can do that kind of compliance work for you. But it's not all that complicated. But so the federal account will come when that time comes. I think you all already have your state account come up, which the cool kids in campaign finance call the non-federal account. And for a state party, almost all of your spending is going to be done out of that non-federal account. Just only a few things will come out of the federal stuff, and only those that are related to federal election expenses. So if you're in a state that doesn't run somebody for Congress, you may not even need a federal account. So I think that you all in Washington are already set up on the campaign finance side, and we can talk in a separate setting to confirm all of that. But I think that Washington's rules require that you do that pretty early. So I think you all are pretty much where you need to be until or unless you identify somebody who's going to run for federal office. So you're in great shape for that right now. I do have templates and things. It's not the first project I've worked on for national party and state party setup and so forth. So I can provide a kind of basic template with a general kind of state party structure. And that'll be something that you all will want to tailor quite a bit, to divide. It's the same thing we mentioned before about our national committee here. How big of a state committee you're going to have? How are you going to have representation done? Is it going to be by congressional district or by counties or some regions or something like that? All of those questions that you all have to decide among yourselves in order to come up with a fair arrangement. And I'll provide some bylaws that you can revise and adapt. We'll also need to go through the state law in most places. Not you, again, like I said, there's no state law on the bylaws there. In a place like Florida and some other states, there are some pretty extensive requirements. New Mexico, I saw mentioned in the questions as well. Very extensive requirements for things that have to be in the bylaws. So I'll help you all go through and make sure that those are included. But the actual structure, like how big is the committee going to be? What officers are you going to have? How often are they elected? And importantly, what authorities are they going to have? All of that kind of stuff needs to be up to you all in the states, I think. A lot of times our friends, those of us on the left, can be very suspicious of any kind of hierarchy and so forth. We have to have some in order for a political party to function, but we can use these rules and the conversations about what rules we're going to have to ensure that we arrive at rules that keep people honest and accountable to democracy within the party. But yeah, I'll be able to help with all of that in the weeks and months coming.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and from the question and answer, we have a comment and a question from Jaime. He writes, I recently moved to New Mexico from Washington. Given the high rate of poverty and houselessness, this is a state that could benefit greatly with the developing party. I'm just getting my legs under me, but would love to know if there are any folks doing the work here. I have 30 years in higher education, and each of my roles have been centered on community, equity, and justice. I want the next leg of my journey to be centered here, justice for all. Any response?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a whole infrastructure down there. In Arizona, both Matthews and a whole group of folks that we can put you in contact with. In most states, there is heavy representation because we did push very hard to have a 51 jurisdiction ballot access. We didn't necessarily achieve it, but we begin the process in as many places as we had folks willing to do so. We also have a database of hundreds of thousands of supporters, and as well as our folks who did make connections and signed petitions throughout the entirety of the process. So yes, you're not down there in New Mexico alone. I was actually scheduled to meet twice this week with Matthew Brody, who actually led the charge there for the campaign prior to a wildfire, unfortunately burning him and his family's home. So, and the short answer to your question is yes, there is infrastructure and people down there in Arizona who will definitely be happy to work with you and move forward. And we'll discuss a lot more of those details again next week when we actually get down to digging into a little bit more work.
Okay, thank you for that. And we have Barbara with a hand raised.
Barbara, you should be able to talk now. You're on mute.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, my question is one I just wrote in the Q&A. My main question is, I hope that you folks will help us all who want to organize ourselves by state and then eventually, even by region and state. And then I would just also echo, when I'm starting to hear, I understand, and I'm not against trying to get, Congress people up and running the next time around, candidates for Congress. But I do think in the meantime, if we get people for school boards and mayors and certainly state assembly districts, that would be awesome because so often voters sneer at running up ballot positions. They don't understand, for example, that in New York State, in order to have ballot access, you have to have a successful, semi-successful presidential candidate, meaning getting something, what is it now, 6% of the vote or something like this, in order to have a party line. So it's this dilemma. But anyway, I think it's just helpful to grow from the grassroots if you have people in the grassroots, and to do by state and then by area within state. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. To that point, I think that it's two parts of the same journey, and that just from our standpoint, we're starting exactly where you want us to start, hyperlocal. That's why a lot of the questions about what the bylaws will be, who will lead, I don't know what the next county really cares about fighting for there. So we're going to start hyper local. I use dog catcher only kinda as a joke, but I truly mean those elections that are closest and most important to people, because I believe that that's what really connects a region, right? So if you have those, if we could run for homeowners association, I would endorse those candidates. Okay. So I wanted that hyper local. And then from that standpoint, if I have a strong New York and I have a strong Florida and I have a strong Wisconsin and Arizona and DC and California, I'm not leaving any of you guys out. Idaho's, if I have a strong each and every one of those, then by default, I have a strong national party.
Yeah.
And so in the same, yes, please.
I'm sorry, jumping in again. I think locally, one thing that's a big issue in my area are the anti-genocide protests and, Palestine liberation and so on. So in my area, the Hudson Valley, the universities and the people protesting they got creamed, physically creamed, and traumatized and so on. So that's a really big issue, and I live in an area where I call it genocide red, genocide blue, big choice, your choice of color. You just get genocide, especially in Congress, so we need to do something, and that's a great area to go for.
No, I fully agree. And things get so muddled. I don't want to get too much into national politics, but things get so muddled in the Capitol building that, that power has so much to do with who you're aligned with in lieu of representing your constituents. But when you're a county commissioner or a school board member or a local judge or sheriff, it's right there. You see those people in the grocery store. And if we have enough mayors and enough county commissioners, then you know what, we have enough of an infrastructure to run for state office and by extension run for national office. So just building upon a foundation that starts with the local parties as the quintessential nodes that we then connect regionally, that will then be connected via state and then nationally by extension, in an ideal world. Hope that's an answer to your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Very welcome.
If I might, I would also
add, please,
that, because you're right, federal offices are necessary for qualifying a national party, but local offices are how you build a state organization. Local offices, and in part it's because many of those local offices that you all are talking about, in a lot of jurisdictions, those are nonpartisan. So you don't even have to necessarily alert your local Democratic Party to the fact that you've left them and are running against them if you're just running for school board and there's no party label. So that can be a real opportunity, and that's really the great way to build the bench for the future, because your state may not be able to come up with a congressional candidate for 2026, but if you've got people who have at least run for county commission and things like that, then in the coming cycles, their name is a little more known to the public. They'll be a stronger candidate for some of these other offices. So you're exactly right.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's see here. I know we had Desmond in line there. And then this will be, I guess, our second to last question. I see Todd's hand there because I do have a 6 p.m. that I have to prepare for. So I want to make sure I leave room for that. But with that, Desmond, please, sir, jump in there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm guessing I already got my question answered. but I'll ask it anyway. So when we were talking about getting the ballot access, I mean, because you basically just explained it, but I guess I answered. Should we can maybe like target because I'm noticing like it's different rules for primaries in many different states and regions, and it's like I really don't see no rhyme or reason to it. Like at least like looking at it right now. I'll probably have to go a lot deeper into it. But is it a
It's
you think
crazy
it's
all the way
anything?
down, my friend.
Yeah, yeah, I believe you. Um, so I'm noticing, it's different types of primaries in different states and regions and things like that. Like open, partially closed. So yada yada, closed. So maybe like we could start with the places that are more inclusive, I guess. Like open the open primaries, the ones where it's partially open. And I'm seeing they got some other types. Saying like two party. I mean, like ones where you can cross, like top two, top four primary. So
Or
I'm
like
super
ranked
brand new
choice
to all of
voting.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess in a nutshell, my question is, or maybe just I'm just saying a thought. If we could start there, like with those places where after we eventually build up from that local, the cities and to the full state, when you go to primaries to try to get that access, um, start with those states that have things that are more open, the primaries that are more open, and work from there. Try to find and see if we could change laws to that could affect us being able to build our third parties and things locally till we can finally get to the national party, basically. So I'm asking, like, should we maybe focus on that as opposed to like places with the closed primaries? I'm thinking like New York and stuff, like, have to, well, it's very tough to do anything because you're not allowed to change.
Yeah. Well, what that refers to generally is whether or not people who are not members of that party, who are not registered with that party, are they still allowed to come in and vote in the primary? And so, yeah, you're right. An open primary, if you're in a state where your organization hasn't gotten to a point yet that you've got political party status, so you can't join the Justice for All party in your state, then yeah, we could at least band all of our supporters together in the state, decide together who we're going to support in those primaries. But one of the beauties of forming our own party, rather than doing an advocacy group and just endorsing or something like that, is that we probably won't have our own primaries. If we have one person who's going to run for Congress in a congressional district, if we have more than one, then we can have some sort of contest between the two of them. But making it to our own party status means that we can just choose our candidate. And then while the other parties are running around in circles doing their primaries and their conventions and caucuses and all that stuff, we know who our candidate is going to be in November. So we can take advantage of that. But yeah, it depends on your circumstances. If you're not there yet, then open primaries are another way that in any circumstance in politics, banding together with other people who share your beliefs and acting in concert is always going to magnify your strength. I think you're right on.
Okay. Thank you.
And you find this interesting, I'm going to drag you into helping me out with it as well. If you keep it up, just be careful.
Yes, sir.
Beautiful. Excellent. Todd, before you start, I see Jay's question, Mike. I know you're typing an answer, but I just want, Jay, I want to meet about Illinois. I'd like to have a one-on-one when you have a chance. So if we can put that on the books, I'll reach out. And then Todd, you're up, buddy.
Hello. Good afternoon here. I'm in California, and what strikes me is I think it would be very helpful, and I've heard some people kind of broach the subject, but to see an organizational chart. And I know that I assume there are, strategic issues about privacy and, how close to the vest we all want to be. So if that's, an impediment to getting that information, then, we should have a discussion. It should be addressed. And I don't ask for that for, some of you might think otherwise from some of my comments in the past, but I'm not being, really don't mean to be negatively critical, I mean, it would be helpful to know who's where and how we can contact some people that are open to being contacted to connect. So and a reason I say this is I think it would be helpful to know this, who's where, and at least as solid as we can see it. For us, just to know and help us to formulate our creative input. So I'd also like to know how many people are on the call. And I'm not saying this to be judgmental, really not. I feel that it would help us to assess, and if we really want democratic input from everybody, because you never know where good ideas are going to come from, that would help. So, okay, hopefully that makes sense. Thanks.
Absolutely. So moving forward, when we come to the meetings, all those who choose to be a part, they won't be in the webinar form like we are now. It'll be a typical Zoom meeting, so you'll be able to see there. For privacy reasons, for folks who might just be coming to hear some information but decide they don't want to walk forward with us for whatever affiliations, we'll keep these sort of larger meetings this way. I want to answer the first part of your question. As of October 31st, Mike and myself included, anyone who was on staff for Cornell West for President became a volunteer. All of our contracts ended that day. So any work from November 1st until now has been the ragtag group of us who were just kept working. So you see most of those folks on this panel here. Windra is there in the audience who's still helping with our CRM manager. Miriam, who worked with our donor relationship managers, will be joining us next weekend as a development manager from the national standpoint. But various other creative folks and support and administrative folks, legal and accounting folks. But aside from that, the organization itself, as far as Cornell West for President, is in existence at this point to retire the debt. I am the person at the helm of leading that charge of retiring the debt. But what we are discussing as far as the the Justice for All Party, this is a new entity. Completely. So all of that will be more forthcoming, and there will, from the standpoint, will be more so maintenance folks for piping. All the decisions will be made, as you heard me say 1,000 times here. All of that will be decided by the local groups. Those who decide to move forward with us will essentially serve as the steering committee of what that national party would look like, to iron out what those bylaws and things that Ashton discussed, like strategic and tactical decisions, will be yours to make. Mike and I are just serving as admins at this point, an executive committee, if you will, to have someone to ink paper and do the things that obviously a collective group cannot do. But I've explained this organization to everyone who I've spoken to internally, is that we are in the apolitical position in the political organization.
What was that last part again?
I'm sorry. What? We're in the apolitical position in the political organization.
Okay. Okay. I just like to see the whole idea about structure is like Mike was saying, that's a whole issue in itself, but there has to be some structure.
Yes.
And just so we could connect.
Mike
So I
won't
guess we'll just keep working
brag
on it.
on himself. Mike won't brag on himself, so I will. He spent decades leading and heading parties. Like he
Awesome.
definitely has every type of template that you need, and we'll present all of that. It's just I didn't want really us to get into work product here until we had the
Okay.
group of working folks for those who just came to hear about what we're doing moving forward.
All right. I appreciate it. Love to all. And hopefully we could move forward constructively. We could, I try not to get too nasty or nasty at all. So that's what I'm trying to communicate here. And we're not Democrats or Republicans. So, okay.
By
Thanks
no
a lot.
stretch. Thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate it. Todd's somebody who's been giving me pushback for like a year now. So I love those folks, man.
Okay. It's got to be in love, man. That's what we've, all
It's
right.
spot on,
Hey,
though.
All right.
It's what we're
that's how you get
what we're
movement,
doing.
right?
Right.
We,
Right.
we
Okay.
got to build structure now. So yeah, we got to figure out what the structure is going to look like, what the committees are going to be. And so I think everybody who, as is said, walks forward with us after this meeting, if you don't want to be part of the state steering committee, or if you have no interest in the national committee, then stop coming to our meetings, because we're going to rope you all into this stuff. If you keep
Okay.
showing up, we're going to assume you're our friend, and we're going to
All
put you to
right.
work.
Mass
So,
hug. Okay. Thanks. Thanks. I'll be
Thank
back.
you. Awesome. We look forward to seeing you. With that, folks, I think we have come to our conclusion here. We went through all the questions. I thank you guys. You guys have hung in. It's 41 minutes after the hour. But I didn't know if you had anything, MC, to close us out with. But for me, I love you guys. I hope to see you guys next week. And I'm going to mute for the rest of the panel, and so everyone can have a chance to say their hellos and goodbyes to you.
You know what? That's it. You said it. Next meeting, next meeting. Look for your email invite for that. Click the link and join us. And this is a recurring meeting every Saturday until Brother Israel said otherwise. And that time is 3 p.m. Central every Saturday. And we look forward to seeing you back next week. And with that, we say peace and blessings. Stay true. Stay in your truth.
Love you all.
great job, Is. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank
y'all
you.
take care.
David, you sit up there quiet the whole time, man. I should have called on you. Thank you for the heart, though.
Well, I have so much to say about how to organize a party that I've never done before.
David's the IT guy, if you guys are wondering. So he's not gonna. All right,
Yeah,
see you
just tell
guys.
me what tools you need, I'll build them, and then you guys can figure out the rest.
And I'm gonna hold you to that.
I will.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thanks all.
Thank you, guys.